All right, so we're going to talk about consciousness. And I want to ask you guys, how many of you have had some sort of transcendent experience? And what I mean by that is, a near-death experience, psychedelic experience, a religious experience through prayer or meditation. There's all of these different ways that you can gain insights, deeper insights, through some sort of non-ordinary state of consciousness. And so why am I talking about this at a hacker conference? I think when I was about 16 years old, I tried LSD for the first time. And I remember walking through my town in the middle of the night, and I was just like looking around at stuff, and I was walking through and looking at the ground and the concrete and the houses and all this stuff, and I was just like, I had this revelation that God gave us everything that we need, and like God didn't want that there. God didn't want all this stuff, and God gives us everything. And I'm not particularly a big religious or God person, but somehow I had this revelation that everything that I need, I already have, and I kept that with me. And I'm not like I don't think that we should bulldoze houses or get rid of all the concrete. The point that I came away with was like I already always have whatever I need, and that was a really great insight for me. And oh, thank you. And so the reason
I'm not getting it. There we go. There we go. I can. Yeah, that's right. Don't look.
I had this up too long, I guess. So why are we talking about this at a hacker conference? And I think that the insights that you can get from these transcendent experiences are really powerful, and they can help you live more peaceful lives. And I think if we all had these tools to have these experiences and to gain these insights, I think that you get this deeper understanding of what it is to be human and interact with other humans. And so that's what we're talking about here. So today we'll talk about what is consciousness. We'll talk about a couple different definitions. We'll use one primarily for this talk. And we'll talk about how technology frames our conscious experience. We'll talk about altered states of consciousness. And then we'll talk a little bit about hacking our own mind-body states. There's an author I read recently, Thomas Roberts, that talks about mind-body states rather than states of consciousness, because it's a little bit more clear, because consciousness, everyone kind of thinks about different things, versus mind-body states is your mind. It's a little bit more understandable. It's more of a tautology, I guess. Like it's your mind-body state. And then consciousness as a network, just a theory that I wanted to put out there and discuss with some like-minded hackers. So what is consciousness? So when people talk about consciousness, a lot of times people will talk about like self-consciousness, like being aware of being aware. It's a kind of a uniquely human thing. There's some arguments about whether monkeys or dolphins or elephants also have self-consciousness, but there's a philosophical idea. There's this guy Thomas Nagel who came out with a paper in 1974, and he talks about there's something when an organism is consciousness, there's something that it's like to be that organism. So he uses the organism of a bat. So he says a bat, and he uses a bat because of they have a pretty unique sense of being in the world. They use sonar echolocation to understand where things are and how they move around and fly and all that kind of stuff. But there's what he argues is that there's something that it's like to have that subjective experience of being a bat. And so that's the definition. And I like the definition because it kind of puts an objective sense in what consciousness is for a very subjective thing. And so for most of this talk, we'll use there's something that it's like qualification to talk about consciousness. So consciousness and technology. And so what I like to think about is like what it's like to be a human now versus 100 years ago is very different because of the times we live in and the technology we use. And I think about some of the technologies that were invented, like the printing press, for example, was a big technology advancement that allowed people to communicate and build on other people's ideas. And we've been doing that ever since the printing press. And then we had the internet come along, and it's like the printing press on steroids. And I think that as we progress, I mean, eventually we might have Neuralink where we can update our ideas to everyone else that's updated to the, so then you have the singularity where everyone's like has all of the information all the time, and I don't know. I think it's interesting to think about because you kind of see the progression of how information is passed through people and what that does for our consciousness. And so most recently, everyone's using AI. All these slides are brought to you by Midjourney, and even this talk. So when I started thinking about doing a talk, I was like, write a talk about consciousness hacking for a hacker conference, and ChatGPT did an okay job. One of the things that I like about this is like they gave me this thing about neurofeedback, which a lot of the stuff I was going to talk about, I thought about talking about, and neurofeedback I didn't really know a lot about. So it gave me a prompt to like think about, okay, what's this neurofeedback about? So I learned more about neurofeedback. You can have these different devices that you can hook up yourself to like an EEG machine, or you can like track your heart rate. And by looking at the stats, you can lower or higher it by looking. And so that's the feedback that you get. That's pretty interesting. But had I not asked ChatGPT to write me a talk, I wouldn't even thought to talk about that, right? So I don't know, I think it's kind of cool. I'm sure I've heard some, it's funny, the stories I've heard about people before this talk, I'm like, man, I wish I would have put that into my talk, because there's some crazy ChatGPT hacking, prompt engineering hacking out there that's fascinating. But for another talk, another time. Altered states. So, talked a little bit about altered states. Yeah, I mean, I had this experience one time. This was another LSD experience where I was hanging out with my friends, and then we all kind of went our separate ways. And I went down and I sat down at my bed, and I had this experience where I could sit. I was like imagining myself sitting down at a desk, and I could pull out a drawer full of memories. I could take out the memories, I could look at them, I could re-experience them. There were conversations that I had, there were movies that I watched, and they were not memories that are top of mind at all. They were somewhere in there, and I could just pick them up and look at them and re-experience them. And then I had this experience where I was like going through a tunnel, and then there was like a lot of pressure, and then I came out and there was all this film and slime, and I was like experiencing my birth, and it was the weirdest thing. And a few years later, I came across this guy, Stanislav Grof, who wrote this book called The Holotropic Mind. And Stanislav Grof is a psychiatrist who is given the most LSD to patients going through like it was like psychology-assisted LSD sessions, basically. And he would sit with them for like 8 hours a day, and he would like do 2 of them a day sometimes, so he'd be like 16 hours just sitting by these patients. And he learned a lot of things, and he had basically this, what he called a mind map, different than Dr. K's mind map. But it was these 4 different levels. So there's the abstract and aesthetic, your thoughts and your perceptions, the kind of top of mind stuff. Psychodynamics, kind of your personal memory stuff. And then there's the perinatal, the birth memories. And there's a lot of people that had these birth memories and trauma at birth. And there's 4 different levels within the perinatal of like coming out of the womb, like right before you come out of the womb, being in the womb, and then coming out of the womb. And a lot of people get stuck in the trauma from their birth, and it'll come throughout their whole life. And I thought that was fascinating because I was like, I experienced that, and so did a lot of other people. So there's something really interesting about that. And then there's transpersonal, so beyond self, space, time. There was a lot of people that had experiences of being like other beings, other animals like whales, or the experience of being a great sequoia tree and the relationship that they had with fire. Because apparently great sequoia trees, they need fire for their pine cones to expand and then have the seeds come out and then grow. So like they need the fire to clear the area and then have the pine cones actually release the seeds and then grow. So it's kind of a love-hate relationship because the fire also kills the trees. So I thought that was really interesting that people could have these types of experiences. And so some of these transcendent catalysts, near-death experiences. There's a book that I read about a doctor that saw these near-death experiences over and over again, and people would explain things to him that they couldn't have known, but they had this out-of-body experience when they almost died, and they saw him have like a little bit of ketchup on his shirt, and he's like, "There's no way you could have known that you're dead." So he started like researching this and found out about a lot of people have these experiences. They have these out-of-body experiences when they almost die, and then they come back. Religious, spiritual experiences. I remember one time I was at a wedding, and my wife was in the wedding, and I didn't know anyone at the wedding, and I wound up talking to the priest for a while, and I asked him, well, why did you become a priest? And he told me this whole story about how God told him to become a priest, and I was like, well, that's interesting, and I didn't know if he was a crazy person or if he had, but I think, he could have had this experience that God was telling him to be a priest. And so, dreams, there's a lot of, insights that people get from dreams. There's this sect of dream yoga too, where people can learn these different levels of yoga within their dreams, and I just think that stuff's fascinating. Psychedelic experiences, talked about a few of those. Meditations, out-of-body experiences, breath work. Stanislav Grof also started this, it's called holotropic breath work. It's kind of like hyperventilating. Wim Hof does a similar type thing. But that can get you into this altered state of consciousness where you can gain a lot of these insights. And then shamanism's like the OG of all of these things. And there's a anthropologist by the name of Michael Harner that studied all these different shamanistic cultures throughout the world. And he found like a common thing that they all have is some sort of drumming. There's always some sort of percussion that happens, whether there's some sort of something that they ingest or don't. There's always like some sort of drumming, and sometimes there's dancing. And so these are some of the canons. Yes, exactly. So this is a little a project that I've been working on. It's called Beyond Tao. It's a community of people that is exploring consciousness through art, science, direct experience, and so it's a Web3 centralized autonomous organization using NFTs that we get through insights gained through these different organizations studying cutting edge of consciousness. So the Monroe Institute is one of them, and the Monroe Institute was founded by this guy, Bob Monroe, who he developed this audio program using binaural beats. So there's like one tone in one ear, one tone in the other. That's slightly different, so it kind of creates this like whoa sound in your brain. And he calls it hemisync, and so it like syncs up both sides of the brain. And there's these meditations that go along with this kind of like this sound that's going on. And there's these different levels of consciousness that you can get to. And so we did an exploratory thing. Like what we want to do is send like a bunch of artists to the Monroe Institute to go through their 6-day program where they're doing like 6 meditations a day and you kind of really get into it. And so we did one just like a couple weeks, and like every day we would do a meditation and we kind of journal and kind of get into the flow state of things. And then, so my experience, one time, so the idea was that like once we kind of got used to doing these things, we would go into the state and come up with a piece of artwork that we wanted to make. And so I had this experience where I was sitting at a beach and I was looking out, way out into the ocean, and I saw this house. And I teleported to this house. I went over there, and then I looked in the windows, and there's kind of this desert scene that was like kind of cartoony and stuff. And I went through the house, and I was in this desert scene, and then I saw the thing that I wanted to make, which was this pyramid that was kind of like a purple bottom, and it had a hand, and then like a glowing pyramid at the top of it. It was cut off like this, and to me this represented knowledge. And so I tried to make it in GIMP, and it looks okay. It doesn't look great or anything. But then I took that, and I put it through Midjourney, and I found some. These are all okay too, but it's kind of cool. I'm like, this is cool. There's this technology that gave me the insight. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Maybe it's psychosomatic. I don't know. But somehow I came up with this idea to make a pyramid with a hand under it that had this glowing orb that's knowledge. And then I put it through Midjourney, and it came up with some other crazy stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I think about this stuff, and I'm like, this is kind of cool. And it brings me to this concept of mind apps. And so this guy Thomas Roberts talks about these different states of consciousness. He calls them mind-body states, and he's got this multi-state theory that like. The state of consciousness that we're normally in, our waking state, where we're talking, interacting, we're highly caffeinated, going to work, doing the stuff that we do, that's not the only state. And there's these other states that you can get into and you can get insights from. And he talks about mind apps being able to kind of stack them on top of each other. So you could use like, meditation and neurofeedback, or neurofeedback and meditation and some psychedelic, and you could come up with all these different recipes, probably an infinite number of recipes, to come up with different insights about consciousness itself. So he talks about like using this as a tool for philosophy and psychology, and like we can create new models by having and utilizing these multi-state theories. And I just thought, yeah, we should do that. That's a good idea. And I think about some of the stuff that Stanislav Grof and some experiences that I've had is that consciousness might be a network, or there's these ideas that like there's panpsychism, like the idea like the earth is conscious, or there's idealism that is everything is within consciousness. And I think that there's something to that, and I think to me, this is one of the most fascinating things to study because nobody understands it. What's up? I think so. I think so. It's like there's the guys that just won the Nobel Peace Prize about like proving that they could predict the spinning of the particles non-locally, right? So they could like, and so what does that mean? Yeah, like what is this mind stuff? What is this quantum material that? It sort of feels that way, and I feel like things are just kind of getting weird, and like we're kind of like discovering this stuff right now, and it's I don't know, it's fascinating to me. And I don't know much about quantum stuff, so I can't speak much to it, but yeah, I think there's something like that that's going on. So, so I think, yeah. Why does this matter? And I think we're living in weird times. There's social tensions. There's climate disasters. There's AI that could take over the world, and we have to stop it now, right? um, and so I think having a deeper level of understanding of what this experience is can really help us and evolve and move forward in a peaceful way. And I think finding the peace within ourselves is the first step. And so I think using some of these tools in the right way. I'm not saying, like, disclaimer, like, don't go out and just do a bunch of drugs, because that's not a good idea. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, but then when do we lose our autonomy and, like, become a cyborg? And I don't know. It's a weird thing to think about. Yeah. What's that? Yeah. We are the driver. Yeah. Yeah. But I think, yeah. So anyway, I think, one of the calls to action. I guess I didn't put this in here. Oh, it was shutting down.
I don't know what it is.
So anyways, this is my contact info. So if you, I don't know, you want to take a picture of it and you want to connect with me on anything on this stuff, the Beyond website's there. If you want to check that out, I think there might be an email. We haven't launched it yet, but if you want to put your email in, we'll connect with you. That's a BEY0ND.US. And then I was also thinking about, and if anyone's interested in this, there's this, I don't know if it's global, but at least in the United States, there's consciousness hackers, and there's people that meet and talk about this stuff, and they have it throughout the states. There's not one in Milwaukee, but I'd be interested in starting one in Milwaukee if people wanted to start one. We could start a Zoom one, yeah. I like the in-person piece, but we got to get Dr. K in, so we'll do Zoom. So, what do you got? What are the books? What's your best recommendation?
There's this book called Hacking Your Mind.
Hacking Your Mind.
You should just take it and start.
Yeah.
Things like LSD and all that, there's some amount of risk.
Yeah.
All this stuff is good stuff, but do it under supervision.
Mhm. Mhm. Fasting, yeah. I didn't put fasting in here. Yeah. I've never fasted more than, I've done it like 24 hours. What do you got? Yeah, and I think about this, there's kind of like a theory that, like, whenever humans invent something in one part of the world, like, they'll invent it in another part of the world too. So, like, once one human figures it out, another one. They've done the same study with rats and mazes too. So is that what you're asking about, like that type of thing? So I think that's possible. I think there's something there, but, like, we don't have like a map or like an understanding of what that is. And
But Zen classes examples of walls. Walls is these short stories, right? That basically are breaking your logical mind. And then you think of life totally different. So,
like the sound of one hand clapping. If you guys like this talk, make the sound of one hand clapping. Any other questions? Cool. Well, if you guys want to start a consciousness hacking thing, find me, connect with me. Or me and Kay are Dr. Kay are gonna start this thing. So if anyone interested? Like, if you have a hand up, we got a couple people. Okay, so maybe we could start a list or. Yeah, maybe. So if people are interested, I'll put a piece of paper up here. If you want to put your name and your email address, we'll get in touch. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. Yeah. Otherwise, you guys aren't gonna take action after tonight. You're gonna, go party too hard at the video games and forget all about this. Hey, thank you. It's brought to you by Midjourney. AI. Brought to you by AI. All right. Cool. Well, thanks, guys, for coming to the late night show. Appreciate you guys' attention and your questions and engagement. It's awesome. So I'll put a piece of paper here if you want to put a name and an email address. We'll start a consciousness hacking thing. Thanks, guys.